Tell 911 someone get a rope, where's the damn stretcher?
The voice was raw, frantic, and carried over the thick Florida heat.
He's gone under. Julia's under the water.
There was splashing, screaming, the sounds of someone sobbing, and then just silence. The pond lay still again, and Julia Banks was nowhere to be seen. If you're new here, welcome. This is where we tell real stories, harrowing accounts of animals, turning against the people who trusted them most. If you want to be part of a community that explores the terrifying relationship between nature and trust, hit that subscribe button. Now buckle in, because what you're about to hear might make you question every moment you've ever felt safe around a creature that smiles with teeth. Julia Banks was raised in central Florida, where the wetlands begin to overtake the land and gators are just part of life. Where some people see a dangerous predator, Julia saw grace, power, beauty. From the age of 10, she was rescuing snakes, tagging along with wildlife volunteers, and begging her parents for pet iguanas. By 15, she was sneaking off to marshes to watch wild gators at dawn, notebook in hand, sketching their movements and giving them nicknames. Her room was full of reptile posters, her closet stacked with old crocodilian field guides, and her computer full of bookmarked gator cams from wildlife reserves. She didn't fear them. She loved them. Obsessively. When she turned 22, Julia started a YouTube channel, Swamp Sweetheart. In it, she'd share educational videos about reptile care, myth-busting facts about crocodilians, and backyard footage of her own growing reptile collection. And then came Tango. Tango was a hatchling American alligator Julia got from a private breeder in Georgia. It was technically legal under a Class 2 permit, barely. She brought him home in a plastic tub with holes drilled in the top and posted proudly about it on Instagram. Meet Tango, my cold-blooded baby, Shan Gator girl. What started as a tiny, chirping lizard grew fast. Julia constructed a pond in her backyard, installed heated lamps, shade nets, and feeding platforms. She hand-fed Tango raw chicken and fish, slowly coaxing him to recognize her scent and voice. By his third year, Tango was over 6 feet long and weighed more than 200 pounds. Friends stopped visiting. Julia didn't care. She had Tango. Videos began to circulate of her swimming beside him, lying on his back, letting him crawl up beside her as she sunbathed. She talked to him like a beloved dog, sometimes whispering in his ear. Her followers ate it up. She gained over 300,000 subscribers and was invited onto podcasts and niche animal lover talk shows, but experts weren't convinced. Several herpetologists raised red flags in comment sections and interviews, warning that alligators, even raised from birth, don't imprint on humans like dogs or cats. They tolerate, they learn feeding cues, but they don't form loyalty, and as they mature, their instincts always take over. Julia dismissed them. Tango trusts me. He knows I'm not a threat. She'd repeat her now infamous phrase, "You just have to respect his world. That's the secret." July 19th was a blisteringly hot Thursday morning. At 6:48 a.m., Julia posted an Instagram story, her feet walking toward the pond in pink flip-flops, coffee in hand. The camera panned to Tango's broad snout as he floated near the surface. "Morning, handsome," she said softly. "Want to swim with me?" She flipped the camera, smiled. That was the last footage ever posted by Julia Banks. By 11 a.m., her cousin Madison arrived to meet Julia for brunch. The back gate was open. The lounge chair beside the pond was empty. Julia's phone and towel sat on a table nearby. One flip-flop was on the grass. Madison called out, "Nothing." Then she looked out at the pond and saw Tango circling slowly in the water and a hand, just barely visible, dangling from below the surface like it didn't belong there. She screamed so loud, the next-door neighbor, Mr. Connors, came running. He called 911. Emergency responders were there in under 10 minutes, but it was already too late. It took an alligator removal team over 2 hours to extract Tango. The gator was aggressive, snapping wildly when approached. He had to be tranquilized with multiple darts before they could safely retrieve the body. Julia was found 6 feet underwater, wedged against the pond's edge, pinned beneath Tango's body. Her right arm had been severed. Deep puncture wounds were found along her shoulder and abdomen. She was likely dragged under in a sudden death roll, but the most disturbing part, her injuries suggested she was alive for at least 90 seconds after the attack began. A full minute and a half of sheer panic as the pet she loved, trusted, and swam beside dragged her under like she was just another deer or raccoon who got too close. Officials say that Julia likely made a critical mistake that morning, possibly feeding Tango while she was in the water or moving too quickly in front of him. But some believe it was inevitable. One local expert who reviewed the case said Tango was a wild animal, raised in captivity but still driven by thousands of years of instinct. Julia thought she was in control, but you don't control nature, you survive it. The video footage from her yard was never released publicly, but authorities confirmed that Tango had been circling her for several minutes before the strike. Was it predatory behavior? Was he confused? Was it a moment of instinct overpowering years of familiarity? We'll never know. Tango was euthanized by wildlife authorities. Julia's family held a private memorial, but her online fan base exploded with debates, outrage, and grief. Some blamed her, others blamed the system that allowed exotic animals to be kept by private owners. But the reality remains. Julia Banks believed she was different. She thought love could overcome biology. She died believing that her pet Gator was still her friend, but the moment she stepped into that pond, she was no longer Julia. She was just meat in the water. The official cause of death? Blunt force trauma and drowning. Case closed, right? But not for Julia's father. Derek Banks was a former wildlife enforcement officer who had seen hundreds of animal attack cases, and something about Julia's didn't sit right with him. He told local reporters, "She knew gator behavior better than most people I trained with. She wouldn't have been careless like that, not unless something else pushed her into the water." Wait, what? Pushed her? Was this a tragic accident or something more sinister? A week after Julia's funeral, authorities re-examined her backyard surveillance system. Now here's where things take a deeply unsettling turn. They recovered 16 minutes of footage from the morning she died. But there was a 47-second gap, a glitch. A blackout in the camera system right before the moment she went under. The timestamp jumped. Julia is seen standing beside the pond, gently calling to Tango. He surfaces, circles, then static. When the video cuts back in, she's gone. A ripple spreads across the pond. What happened during that blackout? Could a tech glitch just coincidentally happen during the exact moment of her death, or was the footage tampered with? And by who? 3 houses down from Julia's lived a man named Carl Finney. He had always been quiet, always kept to himself. But after Julia's death, he started acting different. He boarded up his back porch, sold his kayak, called animal control 3 separate times, reporting gator sightings in his own yard, despite never having done so before. And most strange of all, 2 weeks after the attack, he packed up and moved. No warning, no goodbye. Why would someone flee a neighborhood after a neighbor's accidental death, unless they knew something? Well, Derek Banks thought the same thing, and he confronted Carl. Before he left, what Carl allegedly said, "I told her to stop letting that damn thing roam. I told her one day it'd crawl out of that pond and go for someone else. Maybe it already did." Wait. What did he mean by someone else? That brings us to the autopsy report, a version of which was quietly leaked on an online reptile forum before the official file was released. In addition to the bite wounds consistent with a large gator, Julia had several smaller lacerations on her legs from something with narrow, spaced teeth. Not Tango. This detail didn't make the final report. Why? Experts later speculated it could have been another juvenile gator. Maybe one Julia didn't tell anyone about, or didn't realize had escaped from her old reptile enclosures. That's when a terrifying theory began to spread. What if there wasn't just one gator in that pond that morning? Tango was massive, yes, but slow, predictable. Not the kind of gator that would lunge from the edge and drag a grown woman under unless provoked, but a second smaller gator. Younger, more aggressive. That could have been the spark. If you were watching this unfold, if you were Julia, would you have stepped into the water knowing something unseen might be lurking just beneath the surface? Or would you have felt so safe, so certain that nothing could hurt you in your own pond? Let me know in the comments, but hold on to your thoughts, because it's about to get worse. Madison, Julia's cousin, the one who found her, had forgotten something critical until weeks later. She had been on the phone with Julia that morning. Just a casual, be there in 20 kind of call. The audio was still backed up in her voicemail app, the last 22 seconds of their conversation. Disturbing. Here's a transcript. Julia: he's acting weird today, keeps circling. Madison: he's probably just hungry. Julia: no, it's not him. He's here, but there's something else in the water. A pause, a loud splash, and the phone drops. Wait, then nothing. That voicemail was time-stamped at 7:03 a.m. Julia was declared dead by 7:51. What do you think Julia saw? Another animal, another gator, or something else? You see, deep in Florida, not every pond is a tourist attraction. Some are breeding grounds, some are dumping sites, and some, like Julia's, sit on old swampland with legends buried deeper than bones. And if you thought this was the end of the mystery, just wait, because the water at Julia's pond didn't stay still for long. Would you like me to continue? Before we go deeper, if you've made it this far, you're clearly the kind of person who craves real, chilling, and unexplainable stories, just like this one. So why not become part of a community that dives headfirst into the darkest corners of reality? Subscribe now and hit the bell icon so you never miss when we uncover another terrifying case, where animals turn, dreams predict death, and water hides more than just shadows. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.